Hi, kids. What time is it? It is story time. Well, welcome back. Excuse me. Today we are going to continue in our book, Wonder. I hope you've been enjoying this story so far. Before we get started, let's just sort of review a little bit so that we can remember what has happened that brought us up to where we are right now. Now, as you recall, the story is all about August Pullman. They call him Augie. Now, when Augie was born, he was born with a very unusual face, and he had a lot of medical problems, and they had to do a lot of surgeries on him. And as he grew up, his face was so different that his parents decided it was best they homeschooled him. Um, he had friends that he knew ever since he was a little baby, and they were used to him, and they played and got along. But eventually it got to the point that his mom said that she no longer felt that she could effectively homeschool him because they were starting to get into things that she wasn't good at anymore, like fractions. And so he was now 10 years old, and it was time to consider going to a middle school with other kids. This whole idea scared him a lot because he worried so much about what they would say and how they would treat him because of how unusual his face is. There was so much struggle in his mind and between his family members as to whether he should go or not. And then finally, at the end, he decided he would go to that school. He, they told him that he would meet the director of the middle school, a man by the name of Mr. Tushman. Now, so they did meet Mr. Tushman, and Mr. Tushman decided to have Augie take a tour of the school. But to Augie's surprise, he had three of the kids that was going to be in Augie's homeroom take him on the tour. Augie didn't expect to have to meet other kids, especially kids he didn't know, and this frightened him a whole lot. But we learned a little bit of something about these other kids. Some were nice, and some were not so nice. Okay? The three kids, their names were Julian, I recall, was one, Charlotte was the other, and Jack. I believe Julian is going to turn out to be a problem. What do you think, based on what has happened so far? Let's continue in our story, Wonder. This section is called First Day Jitters. Okay, so I admit the first day of school, I was so nervous that butterflies in my stomach were more like pigeons flying around inside me. Mom and Dad were probably a little nervous too, but they acted all excited for me taking pictures of me and Via before we left the house, since it was Via's first day of school too. Up until a few days ago, we still weren't sure I would be going to school at all. I mean, after all, my tour of the school, Mom and Dad had reversed their sides of whether I should go or not. Mom was now the one saying that I shouldn't go, and Dad was saying I should. Dad had told me that he was really proud of how I handled myself with Julian, and that I was turning into quite the strong man. And I heard him tell Mom that he now thought that she was right all along, but Mom, I could tell, wasn't so sure anymore. When Dad told her that he and Via wanted to walk me to school today, too, since it was on the way to the subway station, Mom seemed relieved that we would all be together. And I guess I was too. Now, even though Bleacher Tech is just a few blocks from our house, I've only been on that block a couple of times before. In general, I try to avoid blocks where there's lots of kids roaming around. On our block, everybody knows me and I know everybody. I know every brick, every tree trunk, every crack in the sidewalk. I know Miss Grimaldi, the lady who's always sitting by her window, and the old guy who walks up and down the street whistling like a bird. I know the deli on the corner where Mom gets her bagels, and the waitresses at the coffee shop who all call me honey and give me lollipops whenever they see me. I love my neighborhood of North River Heights, which is why it was so strange to be walking down these blocks feeling like it was all new to me suddenly. Amesforth Avenue, a street I've been down a million times, looked totally different for some reason, full of people I never saw before, waiting for buses, pushing strollers. We crossed Amesforth and turned up Heights Place. Via walked next to me like she usually does, and Mom and Dad were behind us. As soon as we turned the corner, we saw all the kids in front of the school, hundreds of them, talking to each other in little groups, laughing and standing with their parents who were talking with other parents. I kept my head way down. "Everybody's just as nervous as you are," said Via in my ear. "Just remember that this is everyone's first day at school, okay?" Mr. Tushman was greeting students and parents in front of the school entrance. I have to admit, so far, nothing bad had happened. I didn't catch anyone staring or even noticing me. Only once did I look up to see some girls looking my way and whispering with their hands cupped over their mouth. But they looked away when they saw me notice them. We reached the front entrance. "Okay, so this is it, big boy," said Dad, putting his hand on my shoulder. "Have a great first day. I love you," said Via, giving me a big kiss and a hug. "You too," I said. "I love you, Augie," said Dad, hugging me. "Bye." Then Mom hugged me, but I could tell she was about to cry, which would have been totally embarrassing to me. So I just gave her a fast, hard hug, turned, and disappeared into the school. I went straight to room 301 on the third floor. Now I was glad I had gone on that little tour because I knew exactly where to go and didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing of pretending not to notice. I went inside the classroom and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while all the kids started sitting in different desks. The desks were in a half circle facing the chalkboard. So I chose the desk in the middle towards the back, which I thought would make it harder for anyone to stare at me. I still kept my head way down, just looking up enough from under my bangs to see everyone's feet. As the desk started to fill up, I did notice that no one sat next to me. A couple of times someone was about to sit next to me, then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. "Hey, August." It was Charlotte giving me her little wave as she sat down at a desk in the front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit way up front in a class, I don't know. "Hey," I said, nodding hello. Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her, talking to some other kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting down next to me. It was Jack Will, "What's up?" he said, nodding at me. "Hey, Jack," I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wish I hadn't done because it kind of felt so uncool. "Okay, kids. Okay, everybody. Settle down," said the teacher, now facing us. She had written her name, Miss Petosa, on the chalkboard. "Everyone find a seat, please. Come in," she said to a couple of kids who had just walked in the room. "There's a seat there and right there." She hadn't noticed me yet. "Now, the first thing I want everyone to do is stop talking and..." She noticed me. She put your backpacks down and quiet down. She had only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me. Like I said, I'm used to it by now. "I'm going to take attendance and do the seating chart," she continued, sitting on the edge of her desk. Next to her, there were 3 neat rows of accordion folders. "When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you a folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule and your combination lock, which you should not try to open until I tell you to do so. Your locker number is written on your class schedule. Be forewarned that the lockers are not all lockers are right outside this class, but down the hall. And before anyone even thinks of asking, no, you cannot switch lockers and you cannot switch locks. Then, if there's time at the end of this period, we're all going to get to know each other a little better, okay? Okay." She picked up the clipboard on her desk and started reading the names out loud. "Okay, so Julian Albans," she said, looking up. Julian raised his hand and said, "Here," at the same time. "Hi, Julian," she said, making a note in her seating chart. She picked up the very first folder and held it out towards him. "Pick it up," she said, kind of in a no-nonsense way. He got up and took it from her. "Zima Chen." She handed the folder to each kid as she read off the names. As she went down the list, I noticed that the seat next to me was the only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting at one desk a few feet away. When she called the names of one of the kids, the big kid named Henry Joplin, who already looked like a teenager, she said, "Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you take that seat, okay?" She handed him his folder and pointed him to the desk next to mine. Although I didn't look at him much, I could tell Henry did not want to move next to me, just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor as he came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped his backpack up really high on the right side of the desk so that it was kind of like a wall between his desk and mine. "Maya Markowitz," Miss Petrosa was saying. "Here," said a girl, about 4 desks down from me. "Miles Nuri." "Here," said a kid that had been sitting with Henry Joplin. As he walked back to his desk, I saw him shoot Henry a poor you look. "August Pullman," said Miss Petosa. "Here," I said, quietly raising my hand a bit. "Hi, August," she said, smiling at me very nicely when I went up to get my folder. I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning into my back for the few seconds that I stood in the front of the class, and everyone looked down when I walked back to my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing it, because she had specifically told us not to do it. I was already pretty good at opening locks. Anyway, because I've used them on my bike. Henry kept trying to open his lock but couldn't do it, and he was getting frustrated and kind of cursing under his breath. Miss Petosa called out the next few names. The last name was Jack Will. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, "Okay, so everybody write your combination down somewhere safe that you won't forget, okay? But if you do forget, which happens at least 3.2 times per semester, Mrs. Garcia has a list of all the combination numbers. Now go ahead and take your locks out of your folders and spend a couple of minutes practicing how to open them. Though I know some of you already went ahead and did that anyway." She was looking at Henry when she said that. "And in the meanwhile, I'll tell you guys a little something about myself. And then you guys can tell me about yourselves and we'll get to know each other. Sounds good? Good." She smiled at everyone, though I felt like she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Miss Garcia's smile, but a normal smile, like she meant it. She looked very different from what I thought teachers were going to look like. I guess I thought she'd look like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, an old lady with a big bun on top of her head. But in fact, she looked exactly like Mon Mothma from Star Wars Episode 6. Haircut kind of like a boy's, and a big white shirt, kind of like a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry still couldn't get his lock open, and he was getting more and more frustrated every time someone else popped one open. He got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, if he hadn't put the backpack between us, I most definitely would have offered to help him. Miss Petosa told us a little about who she was. It was boring stuff about where she originally came from and how she always wanted to teach, and she left her job on Wall Street about 6 years ago to pursue her dream and teach kids. She ended by asking if anyone had any questions, and Julian raised his hands. Yes. She had to look at the list to remember his name. Julian? That's cool about how you're pursuing your dream, she says. Thank you. You're welcome, he smiled proudly. Okay, so why don't you tell us a little about yourself, Julian? Actually, here's what I want everybody to do. Think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. Actually, wait a minute. How many of you came from a Beecher Lower School? About half the kids raised their hand. Okay, so a few of you already know each other, but the rest of you, I guess, are new to the school, right? Okay, so everyone think of 2 things you want other people to know about you. And if you know some of the other kids, try to think of things they don't already know about you. Okay? Okay. So let's start with Julian, and we'll go around the room. Julian scrunched up his face and started tapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. Okay, whenever you're ready, Miss Petosa says. Okay, so number 1 is that... do me a favor and start with your name, okay? Miss Petosa interrupted. It'll help me remember everyone. Oh, okay. So my name is Julian, and the number one thing I'd like to tell everyone about myself is that I just got Battleground Misty for my Wii, and it's totally awesome. And the number two thing is that we got a ping pong table this summer. Very nice. I love ping pong, said Miss Petosa. Does anyone have any questions for Julian? Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or one player? Said a kid named Miles. Not those kind of questions, guys, said Miss Petosa. Okay, so how about you? She pointed at Charlotte, probably because her desk was closer to the front. Oh, sure. Charlotte didn't hesitate for even a second, like she knew exactly what she wanted to say. My name is Charlotte. I have two sisters, and we just got a new puppy named Suki in July. We got her from an animal shelter, and she's so cute. That's great, Charlotte. Thank you, says Miss Petosa. Okay, then who's next? Like a lamb to the slaughter. You remember that term that Augie heard his daddy say that night in the car? Something that you say about someone who goes somewhere calmly, not knowing that something unpleasant is going to happen to them. That's what meant by a lamb to the slaughter. According to Augie, he says, I Googled it last night. That's what I was thinking when Miss Petosa called my name, and suddenly it was my turn to talk. My name is August, I said. And yeah, I kind of mumbled it. What? Said someone. Can you speak up, honey? Said Miss Petosa. My name is August, I said louder, forcing myself to look up. I have a sister named Via and a dog named Daisy, and that's it. Wonderful, said Miss Petosa. Anyone have questions for August? No one said anything. Okay, you're next, said Miss Petosa to Jack. Wait, I have a question for August, said Julian, raising his hand. Why do you have that funny braid in the back of your hair? Is that like a Padawan thing? Yeah. I shrugged, nodding. What's a Padawan thing? Said Miss Petosa, smiling at me. It's from Star Wars, answered Julian. A Padawan is a Jedi apprentice. Oh, interesting, answered Miss Petosa, looking at me. So are you into Star Wars, August? I guess, I nodded, not looking up because what I really wanted was just to slide under the desk. Who's your favorite character? Julian asked. I started thinking maybe he wasn't so bad. Jango Fett. What about Darth Sidious? He said. Do you like him? Okay, guys, you can talk about Star Wars at recess, said Miss Petosa cheerfully. But he kept going. He wasn't, let me see. He haven't heard from you yet, she said to Jack. Now it was Jack's turn to talk, but I admit I didn't hear a word he said. Maybe no one got the Darth Sidious thing, and maybe Julian didn't even mean anything at all. But in Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith, Darth Sidious' face gets burned by Sith lightning and becomes totally deformed. his skin gets all shriveled up and his whole face just kind of melts. I peeked at Julian and he was looking at me. Yeah, he knew what he was saying. There was a lot of shuffling around when the bell rang, and everybody got up to leave. I checked my schedule, and it said my next class was English, room 321. I didn't stop to see if anyone else from my homeroom was going my way. I just zoomed out of the class and down the hall and sat down as far from the front as possible. The teacher, a really tall man with a yellow beard, was writing on the chalkboard. Kids came in laughing and talking in little groups, but I didn't look up. Basically, the same thing that happened in homeroom happened again. No one sat next to me except for Jack, who was joking around with some other kids who weren't in our homeroom. I could tell Jack was the kind of kid that other kids like. He had a lot of friends. He made people laugh. When the second bell rang, everything got quiet, and the teacher turned around and faced us. He said his name was Mr. Brown, and then he started talking about what we would be doing this semester. At a certain point, somewhere between A Wrinkle in Time and Shin of the Sea, he noticed me, but kept right on talking. I was mostly doodling in my notebook while he was talking, but every once in a while, I would sneak a look at the other students. Charlotte was in this class. So were Julian and Henry. Miles wasn't. Mr. Brown had written on the chalkboard in big block letters, P-R-E-C-E-P-T. I don't know if you can see that, but it spells out the word precept. Okay, everybody, write this down at the very top of every first page in your English notebook. As we did what we were told to do, he said, okay, so who can tell me what a precept is? Does anybody know? No one raised their hands. Mr. Brown smiled, nodded, and turned around to write on the chalkboard again. And what he wrote was, precepts equal rules about really important things. I'll repeat that. Precepts equal rules about really important things. Like a motto, someone said. Like a motto, Mr. Brown nodded as he continued writing on the board. Like a famous quote, like a line from a fortune cookie, anything or ground rule that can motivate you. Basically, a precept is anything that helps guide us when making decisions about really important things. He wrote all that on the chalkboard and then turned around and faced us. So what are some of the really important things? He asked us. A few kids raised their hand, and as he pointed at them, they gave their answers, which he wrote down on the chalkboard in really, really sloppy handwriting. Rules, schoolwork, homework. What else, he said, as he wrote, not even turning around. Just call out things. He wrote everything everyone called out. Family, parents, pets. One girl called out the environment. He wrote the environment. He wrote on the chalkboard and added, our world. Sharks, because they eat dead things in the ocean, said one of the boys, a kid named Reed. And Mr. Brown wrote down sharks. bees, seatbelts, recycling, friends. Okay, said Mr. Brown, writing all those things down. He turned around when he was finished writing to face us again. But no one's named the most important thing of all. We all looked at him, out of ideas. God? Said one kid. But that wasn't the answer that he was looking for. Without saying anything else, he wrote down who we are. You see that? Who we are. Now, where have we heard that before? Who we are. Who we are, he said, underlining each word as he said it. Who we are. Us. Right? What kind of people are we? What kind of person are you? Isn't that the most important thing of all? Isn't that the kind of question we should be asking ourselves all the time? What kind of person am I? Did anyone happen to notice the plaque next to the door of this school? Anyone read what it says? Anyone? He looked around and no one knew the answer. It says, "Know thyself," he said, smiling and nodding. And learning who you are is what you're here to do. I thought we were here to learn English, Jack cracked, which made everyone laugh. Oh yeah, that too, Mr. Brown answered, which I thought was very cool of him. He turned around and wrote in big, huge block letters that spread all the way across the chalkboard, Mr. Brown's September Precept. When given the choice between being right or being kind, choose kind. That's Mr. Brown's September Precept. Okay, so whenever he said, okay, so everybody, he said, facing us again, I want you to start a brand new section in your notebooks and call it Mr. Brown's Precepts. He kept talking as we did what he told us to do. But put today's date at the top of the first page, and from now on, at the beginning of every month, I'm going to write a new Mr. Brown's Precept on the chalkboard, and you're going to write it down on your notebook. Then we're going to discuss that precept and what it means. And at the end of the month, we're going to write an essay about it, about what it means to you. So by the end of the year, you'll all have your own list of precepts to take away with you. Over the summer, I asked all my students to come up with their very own personal precepts, write it on a postcard, and mail it to me from wherever you go on your summer vacation. People really do that, said one girl whose name I didn't know. Oh yeah, he answered. People really do that. I've had students send me new precepts years after they've graduated from this school. Actually, it's pretty amazing. He paused and stroked his beard. But anyway, next summer seems like a long way off. I know, he joked, which made us laugh. So everybody relaxed a bit while I take attendance. And then when we're finished with that, I'll start telling you about all the fun stuff we're going to be doing this year in English. He pointed to Jack when he said this. He pointed to Jack when he said this, which was also funny. We all laughed at that. As I wrote down Mr. Brown's September precept, suddenly I realized that I was going to like school no matter what. Wow. Augie, I'm proud of him. He's going to make this work. He knows he's got a challenge ahead of him, but he's learned how to overcome it. He's learning how to overcome it, okay? In our next episode, let's see what happens to him. Let's see his character continue to develop, okay? You know, character development is a very important part of novel reading. When you read a novel, and a novel is any book which is really a made-up story, and this is really a made-up story, there's always a character. It may be a main character, there may be a set of characters, but the important thing is what's called character development. Watch how they change throughout the story, because that character development might teach you a lot about yourself. Okay, we're going to continue to have a whole lot of fun with this book next time. I hope you're enjoying these. Until then, you're strong, you're smart, you're loved.